So, come all the way from London, managed to get 2 whole days off work to come and speak to you guys. I've wanted to come to Sónar for probably the last 10 years or so with my best friend. My best friend's here with me today as well. Super excited to just tell you where the game came from, touch upon what I did before that point, and the types of things we tried to do to make a game that truly was for everyone. So, a couple of the touch points I'm going to go on today are my own background, who ustwo is and why we have a games team in the first place, the origins of Monument Valley, the sort of seed of an idea that came into one of the developers' heads from the get-go. I'm going to talk about how we made some design decisions, some visual decisions to create something that anybody from a 6-year-old boy to a 70-year-old grandma would love to play. I'm going to talk about how not only did we manage to make this game, it's about how do you manage to market something that goes against the grain with a price point of $2, $4 actually on release, without any sort of marketing budget whatsoever. And then I'm going to let you in into sort of some of the results past that point, as it's been 15 months, I think, since the game's release. So, for anyone who isn't familiar so far, I'm going to play the original release trailer. It's about a minute or so, I think. Even after all this time, that still brings back some really strange memories. I think it's all those late nights. Like, I know that particular trailer we did in maybe 6 hours of editing or so, between midnight and 6 in the morning. You get to that time where you need to release a game, or you've committed something to the press, and you're just there late at night just before it has to be done. I mean, even the name wasn't decided until 2 hours before we ran a piece with Wired. So for as much as this sounds organized, most of this is sort of make it up as you go along. So I'll tell you a little bit about me to give you a bit of context about what I'm going to talk about. So probably 8 years ago now, after graduating university with a degree in computer entertainment technology, I managed to get a QA position at Lionhead Studios, which is part of Microsoft. That was working on the Fable series, which at the time was my sort of biggest thing. The company Lionhead Studios actually used to be Bullfrog, which I don't know if any of you guys are playing Theme Hospital or Magic Carpet or Dungeon Keeper or anything like that. So for me to be able to sit around a sort of boardroom table and have conversations with those people who I looked at on a leaderboard when I was 8 is a bit of a mind-blowing experience. After that, I left to go and join a new startup company as employee number 5, which was a company called Hello Games, making the Joe Danger series. The same guys who are now making No Man's Sky. I'm not sure if any of you guys have kept up to date with E3 news this week. So both really exciting companies. One really, really big, probably 200 people at its maximum over there at Microsoft. And the other one, I think now they sit at about 12 people or so. So it's a good range of that. One thing I actually wanted to do, though, was to be able to not be in a basement making games for gamers surrounded by just middle-class English white dudes. I wanted to go to a place that had people from all over the world, all different types of cultures, and make games that people weren't expecting yet. And the only place that I could do that was in a company that didn't actually concentrate on making games. So I joined in February of 2013. So I've talked a little bit about my background. ustwo is slightly different. It's probably a 220-person company, and they have studios in London and Malmo in Sweden, one in Sydney, one in New York, and they concentrate predominantly on digital products, mainly for clients, some of their own stuff as well. I say they, but we are still part of that whole umbrella. But one of the things that you struggle to do when doing work for clients is being able to talk about all the amazing work that you've done. A lot of it's white label. A lot of the time you can't shout from the rooftops about this beautiful thing that you've just created. So what's the best way to counter that? Is to probably create a digital product that's the most forward-facing digital product that you can make, and that's games. Also enables us to not be confined to the restrictions of what a client or someone outside of the team actually wants. And the majority of the time, the client work is based around trying to monetize effectively. Whereas what we could do this time is to create games for no other reason apart from the creative joy of making games. So it was a bit of an experiment. It could have all failed at one point, but I'm glad to say that it succeeded. And also Mills, who was one of the founding two people of ustwo, hence the name ustwo, he actually just got bored of doing banking apps and fashion apps and wanted to make some cool stuff for once. So the thing that everyone always asks is, where did the idea come from? You know, you see it now and it's fully fleshed out and released state. And it seems like everything was planned from the beginning right the way to the end, and it's a great piece of art. But it actually just starts from this email, and this is Mills, one of the guys. And I think it was a joke, but we were never too sure. So he sent an email and just said, I don't care what you do or how you do it, but I expect the next game you guys make to be Apple Game of the Year. And if you're not, then you're all fired. We did think it was a joke. We laughed it off at the time, said, yeah, we'll do that, that's great. 50% of the team had never worked together before. You know, it wasn't a massively established team. So to be able to try and aim for that, it was a lofty game. Everybody should always have lofty aims. But it seemed a little bit unreal at the time. So we think about how do you even go about doing that? How do you make an award-winning game? You know, you analyze things that have won that kind of accolade in the past. And you know, personally for me, I narrow it down to the things that are on this slide. Something needs to be perfect for the hardware that it was created for. So for a mobile space in particular, it's creating a game around the interactions that you use on a daily basis. The touches, the swipes, the rotations that you use in Monument Valley are all interactions that you use in other applications every single day. So we play to that strength. Even the idea of the game being in portrait and not landscape, that's the preferred method for holding your device. Every single decision that we make is based around this. And even if you look back at past winners of various awards, they also follow a lot of these paradigms. We also try to not be a cookie cutter sort of genre copy. Either we expand on what a genre is, or we create a whole new one. You know, a lot of, even on the next point 3 on there, is Monument Valley a game or is it an experience? You know, different people have different opinions on that question. It's not a particularly difficult game to get through, and it's designed that way specifically. Some people see it as an interactive piece of art. Some people see it as just an artistic expression from the team. And not only that, we need to concentrate on hitting the high that we can possibly do as a team. We knew that we managed to sort of get together a group of really talented developers. So instead of following the pack in regards to we should be making something that's free, we should be doing an art style that's already out there and proven. We should be doing test cases in markets, and we should follow everything you read on the internet. We wanted to set a new standard, not copy something that's been done before. And you know, the most important one on there is to be able to make it from the heart. It needs to feel like it was made by humans and not robots. You need to play it and understand what somebody went through when making this and what they were trying to say to you. You know, we only had 2 artists over the course of Monument Valley. And a lot of people can pick out which levels were created by each artist, which I always find really interesting because it's so personal to them. This is also one of the first things I said in one of the big meetings that we had, August of 2013. Said, guys, we're like a phalanx, brothers going into greatest battle of our lives, hoping we'll return as champions, or we might just come back in a box. Nobody knows. And the idea of a phalanx is that you don't place the greatest warriors you can next to each other to hope to have the greatest strength. What you actually do is you put brothers and uncles and sons all in unison, people who share a common direction or a common bond, and only that way will you get the greatest strength. And that's the way that we built our own team. We built it with people who get along as friends and as people, not just as colleagues and experts within their specific area. And that's the original Monument Valley team, only 8 people. So admittedly, all guys, which has now been changed. But yeah, the original 8 people were split up into 4 artists, 3 programmers, and now we have me as executive producer, another producer, and also an on-site QA technician as well. So it's a pretty well-rounded team, and it means that we manage to sort of cover each other's bases at all times. Yeah, this actual wall, I like putting this in because someone asked us to take some photographs for a website, and I don't know if you've ever noticed, but developers all take photos of them pointing at things. So this is our stock photo of game developers pointing at things on a wall. And this wall in particular is, this is where we would place every single screen of Monument Valley, every single chunk, every single interaction that you have up on a wall, so we can work out what the color palette should be, what the difficulty curve should be. Whether something feels harsh or too serene for that point in the game, the narrative arc of where things should be. And this constantly changed. We would rip post-its down and replace them with other things. And I know Chapter 3 specifically got changed, I think 90 minutes before we submitted the final build to Apple. That's how quickly we iterated and we threw things away. Let's go right to the beginning. This is my favorite thing about Monument Valley, and it's my favorite piece of art that I've worked with in the last 8 years of making games. And the reason for that is it was, before it was even a game, this was Ken Wong, lead designer on Monument Valley, just creating a piece of art and not even knowing how it was going to behave as a game yet. First thing that ever got made. And we just hung it up on a wall, 2 weeks. And we let every single visitor and every single team member come up, and we asked them, we said, what do you think this is? And we allowed that to grow and brew into an idea until we decided to take it into an actual prototype. Now, the thing I find the most interesting about it is it doesn't look too dissimilar to another 18 months worth of work. And I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But you will notice that there's actually no impossibility in this picture. That was something that came much later in Monument Valley's life cycle. So, we took things into an actual fully functioning prototype. The previous screen that you saw was just done in Photoshop. This one, we spent 2 weeks making a level in which we entitled Time Island. Obviously never made it into the final game. Nothing anyone ever starts doing at the beginning makes it into a final game. But the premise of this, it was much more of a test of engaging interactions, the idea of doing something and feeling a sense of wonder over achieving it. And this one in particular had an hourglass set atop the monument. And whenever you flip this 180 degrees, the state of this monument, this island changed, so rocks would fall away, architecture would fall away. And if you placed a seed in the center where you can see this tree, a tree grew out of that spot and lifted a platform up towards a central location. And when you did that, it felt great. We showed that to the rest of the studio, and immediately we knew what the game was going to be for the entirety of its lifetime. I really wish games were as easy to make for us now as that one was, being able to see a central idea and just use that as an anchor for the next 12 months of development and have it dictate every decision that you make. It was a really, really good test. Nobody's actually seen these screenshots by us. The first time I've ever used them anywhere. So this one was a test bed that we created, which was, you watch anyone play Monument Valley and they instinctively know where to touch and where to interact with something, and most of the time in which direction to actually move that object. And that's all down to the sort of visual treatments that we use on this structure. You can see the blue objects on the left-hand side. What size should they be? What shape should they be? How should they interact when you move them? Should they potentially vibrate when they're being hovered, when they're being touched? They're all questions that got answered pretty early on as well. Then we moved on to looking at the sort of visual treatments of these. The previous things you saw were kind of basic, We toyed with many different ideas, even some that aren't even on here, extremely realistic brick-like structures, fairy tale looking structures. And in the end, what we really wanted to do was to create something that didn't look like a game. It looked like a piece of graphic art. I've been to places since where we've done a talk, or perhaps we've had a stall selling merchandise, and people have come up and asked to buy a print, not even knowing what the game is, because they think that's just what we do. We're just a design agency that creates prints. And a lot of that was set out from this point. I actually really wish we made the black and white one. Maybe we will in the future, we'll see. But I mean, even now you can see that Ida isn't set. She is just she's an oblong with a sphere on top. We're still yet to decide what that's going to be and how to give these sort of digital landscapes an extra sense of character. Which brought us on to the concepting stage of what this character should be. Now, if we think about what those pillars we set out at the beginning, what is an award-winning game? It's something that everybody could play and has sort of wide-reaching appeal. So what we actually decided to do was to create a character that anybody could project themselves onto. She is essentially a blank canvas. She isn't even particularly masculine or feminine. She is anything you want her to be. She has no face. She has no expression. Really, the main character of Monument Valley is Monument Valley, not Ida. And that's the really interesting thing. That's how we've managed to have young people and old people alike get really attached to what Ida is and what she's trying to achieve. So we tried to simplify that down, make her a little bit more joyful in the way that she moves. And I guess the really simple way of doing that is you can see the changes in the skirt and the hat formation in the concept art. What I'll also talk about on the next slide is how the silhouette of that character works within the space. Some of the spaces on screen can get quite complex at times, and she really needs to stand out from what that is. So then we move on to the crows themselves. Now, I don't know, I always wonder if people have noticed this when playing the game, but Ida and the crow are essentially mirror images of each other. The hat formation itself is very similar to the beak-like formation of both characters. And I don't know if I'm spoiling anything. I won't say what I was going to say anyway, in case nobody's played it and then you do want to go and play the game. But yeah, some work went into the crow to give them a feeling that they weren't the enemy. They need to feel endearing. You need to want to try and help the crows, even though they're like an annoying little nephew, as opposed to a huge enemy that you need to overcome. So, when combining all these things together, we set ourselves a deadline of when we were going to announce this to the press, what our big sort of coming out party was going to be for this game. And we created a piece of concept art on the right which combined all these things together. Admittedly, at the time, Ida was actually orange, so no one ever picks that up in this concept art. We toyed with the idea for a long time. And in December of 2013, we compiled all these ideas together into a trailer and a couple of screenshots, which we eventually sent out to Wired at that point, and that really blew up after that. And even the name, like I said, we only decided 2 hours before actually submitting all this content. And the name itself is designed as somewhere that seems familiar. I mean, Monument Valley is a place, you know, but it also seems strange and unknown, and you're questioning why it's there, why the structure's formed in that way, and it's somewhere that you want to go to. Really important thing about this as well is our emphasis on user testing these interactions. It's something that not enough game developers do, and it's something that we took from the wider company, being a digital product studio, is the idea to user test everything. In our opinion, it's not good enough to say, this is my game, people will like it because I like it. You know, if we truly want as many people as possible to play it, then this is the direction that we need to take. Every single day, everything that we make, we get a randomer from the studio, we get them in and say, just play this. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes they'll get stuck. Sometimes they'll even say, I'm really bored right now and just want to leave. And that's fine, that's all part of the learning process. And that goes from day one until a couple of days before release day when the build is sort of signed, sealed, and delivered. So, we have this game. We've built it all the way up. And being a paid game, you know, you hear all these things about, you know, average revenue per user, cost per install, all these terms that you read when being a game developer. And a lot of these things rely on cost-effective marketing based upon the maximum revenue that you can make per user. With a paid game, for us, that's a maximum of $4. Paid advertising is completely out of the question. And not only that, we kind of felt it went against the tone of the game itself. It's the reason why we don't have things like push notifications in the game. So what can we do to maximize the hype around this on the run-up to release? Got no budget, nothing we can spend. The only thing you can do is word of mouth. So part of that is talking about the new team members we've got on board. Luckily, a few of the team members came from quite well-known studios. Myself, as I mentioned before, and Ken Wong, who's the lead designer, who used to design the Alice Madness Returns series, which he did with EA. So we play on those angles. We play on things that people do know. And it was quite hard to begin with because it was only going to be an iPad game. We weren't going to do it for all these platforms. It was like, this is a piece of art suited to a large screen, and we don't even know if these minute interactions are going to work on a much smaller device. So our strategy very much was to focus on the things that we did have access to. If we were a design company, we contact design press. We contact tech press. We express how this is a really new take on making games. It's a design studio deciding to make this. And they're not making it for monetary reasons, they're making it for creative reasons. We really played on that. And using our own contacts from the industry in the past and the tech and design contacts, we secured really specific exclusives with these partners. So Wired is one of those. We still have a really good relationship with the guys over there. And anytime we're going to announce something, a trailer or new screenshots for anything that we're going to do, those guys will be one of the first people we contact. I think those relationships are extremely important when we're in such a sort of small and competitive mobile industry. And even the social media stuff that we set up, when I came in, I think we had about 120 followers on ustwo Games. We'd done a couple of minor games before that. I think now we're approaching the 100,000 mark. And because we interact with these people on a daily basis, we try and answer every question we can. We're really honest with the things that we talk about. And I think people really appreciate how honest we are with our data, with the business side of things as well. So this is the thing I mentioned earlier, which is the first major headline we had for Monument Valley. Went on the Wired webpage, and this might be the most beautiful game of 2014. Again, something that seemed a bit ridiculous and really pie in the sky and far away at that moment in time. But it really brought the game to the masses. I think that particular article got 4 million hits in the first few weeks. It's the biggest amount of exposure we've ever had. And again, another level that actually didn't make it in the game. This guy was very happy. He's like, you're doing it now, guys. I have no worries that you actually are going to make Game of the Year, because Wired said you're going to make Game of the Year. Surely that's how it works, yeah? So how do we manage that public relationship and how we speak to people? I think it was important to, if we are making this as people and as humans, and as we're putting so much of ourselves into it, we need to seem like humans to the public. Sometimes that means saying things we maybe shouldn't say that are too honest. Sometimes it means engaging with people and potentially telling them that we disagree. But it means forging a day-to-day personal relationship that doesn't involve only saying something when you want to sell something, which really frustrates me personally from being at other companies. It's, hey guys, watch this trailer. Hey guys, have you seen this new product that we've got available? It's just engage with people, get their feedback. They're the people, it's like a band, you know? No band who cares about their creative integrity would completely ignore the fans. You do everything for the fans. They're who put food on the table at the end of the day. So yeah, we did that for Twitter, we did that for Facebook. Still got a few things to expand upon. We never had an Instagram account. We're going to do a new web page. And I guess it's always the point of just forever learning, always learning from what you're doing and trying to expand on it. So we talked about everything that happened before this point, the origins of the game, the things we tried to do to maximize the success of the game, the team, our ways of working. So what did it turn out to be like? And I want to touch upon the first thing, which is when we're talking about success. For us personally, we always knew that our barometer for success was how much people loved the game and how much people wanted to experience more of the game. Forget about the financial side of things, or even the previous thing I said about how many Twitter followers we've got or anything else. It's people taking the time to make white outfits and their own weekends and going to shows and standing in fields to get the right photographs to dress as something that they really loved. That's the most important thing to us. That's what we feel our greatest achievement has been, as create characters in a world that really resonate with people. Getting people to appreciate the art of the game so much that it causes them to contribute to an art blog that's just dedicated to fan art created around the theme of Monument Valley. I think there's probably 400 different entries on Monument Friends right now, which is a Tumblr that we have going. All different types of art styles, from 4-year-old kids to professional artists, as you can see here as well. I always say that if the biggest problem someone has with your game is that they want to experience more of it, then you've got to be doing something right, even if they complain a lot. We even ran this goes back to the sort of social presence we have. Running competitions, we asked people to send us photographs in of the most interesting places that they've been playing Monument Valley. We gave away prints and copies of the game and all sorts of stuff. I think we had probably another 60 people apart from this add photographs in. This guy was in a plane. I don't think this is safe, right? But he still didn't win. The one that's on here actually didn't win. And from that, second down the tier system is critical acclaim. It's the idea that, being younger and watching all these award shows and watching all the game developers that you look up to, voting for your game is an incredible thing. For me personally, one of the happiest memories of the last 12 months for me was being at GDC this year when we were at Game Developers Choice Awards. And we were sat on a table next to John Romero, the creator of Doom. And on the other table was Hironobu Sakaguchi, creator of the Final Fantasy series. And when we luckily won a couple of awards that night, and having those people come up to us and congratulate us, I think it's the only time I've cried in about the last 10 years. I think my inner 10-year-old would have probably weed himself at that point. So following all these things that we said about making design decisions around the character and the world to be for everyone, the idea of creating things that are blank canvases that the player can sort of attribute their own personality to, that was all done in mind to not only sort of widen that age range of what games can be and what gamers can be, but also regions. Like, this is one of my favorite pictures of when me and Ken went to China last year. We went to go and try and find a Chinese partner to release Monument Valley. And Ken was like a celebrity over there. So it's a Chinese guy made Monument Valley, came over and did non-stop interviews for 6 hours in a golden throne. That was like my favorite part of the entire trip. China actually stands as I think it sells as many units per day as US does right now. So it's a really developing market for a paid product. Again, we're trying to book the trend of what you should be doing when you're making games. Paid games can work. Don't listen to anybody who tells you that that's dead and we should all be making free stuff from now on. Over 5 million downloads to date, and I only added up the number of countries this morning, which is 86 countries it managed to be #1 in since release. And I don't actually know if I could name you 86 countries, which is the most surprising thing about that statistic. So what we do next? That's always the next thing that gets asked. As soon as we get off stage, it's like, great, I love that game. Kind of bored of that game now. You've talked about it for the last 45 minutes. Tell me what you're doing now. And I was really happy to see the VR sets that are over here on the left-hand side. We're actually making a game for Samsung's Gear VR right now called Land's End, which follows a lot of the same visual traits and sort of principles that Monument Valley does. The most important of which is being platform perfect. We were sick of seeing people make games for VR that was, let's take Halo or a first-person shooter and put it in VR and watch it not work. The idea that creating an experience for a new piece of hardware needs to be different every single time. So that's one of the challenges that we're trying to overcome this year, as well as trying to create that extremely difficult second album, to use the band analogy again. We're struggling to come up with fresh ideas that better what we did before, especially seeing as after what Mills said originally about you guys better make Game of the Year, he's now just said you better take over the world or we'll be fired. But I think if we almost take over the world, then it's still a success. So yeah, new games, nothing to talk about yet. I'd love to come back next year and hopefully talk to you guys about the new things that we've got, so I can get incredibly excited about those. So if you take anything away from me talking today, because I seem to have an incredibly machine gun-like talking style, it's that make games for you and from the heart. You know, if it's something that you really want to make and it feels personal to you, you will execute that 10 times better than something that somebody else wants you to make. Even if it doesn't make amazing financial success at the time, your execution will still be better. Good team atmosphere and employing people who you consider as family, you want to spend hours and hours with. That's how we personally feel we're going to get the best results. And understanding that audience from the start and creating an anchor point like that first image of Monument Valley was, and sticking to it throughout the course of development. And also there's a certain amount of luck involved. So that's it. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Exactly.
Good questions.
Now, if anyone want to ask a question, okay. Who? Okay.
Hi.
Hey.
What inspiration did you have to build this game? You can notice some Escher,
Yeah,
but
definitely.
What about maybe art, other video games, for example?
Yeah, there's loads of things that actually came to mind. And as you know, often you're not completely aware of them at the time. It's that idea of, like being a songwriter, you spend half your time writing a song and realize that it's actually just a Beatles song after all. I mean, everything from normal real-life architectural styles. Ken went on a trip to Morocco, for example. So a lot of, say, Labyrinth chapter is very much in that style. Games specifically, I was having a conversation earlier. I mean, the obvious similarities are things like Echochrome or Limbo, or some of the color palettes are quite similar to Journey. Even the totem is tonally quite similar to, say, the companion cube in Portal. There's lots of things that, as gamers and people who love games, you just want to put all your favorite things together and throw them into one weird mix and see what happens.
You are talking about my favorite games.
All your favorite games?
Yes. Yeah.
I have two questions,
Yeah.
if I can. First is I love the game, but also I love a lot Ken Wang as an artist. And I wanted to know what's the story of how he becomes part of the team, because I think he's a key part of Monument Valley.
Yeah.
So it could be pretty interesting. And then it may sound kind of a cliche, but what about the House of Cards story and how you end?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. I wanted to talk about it, but there wasn't going to be enough time to talk. But I will answer it now. So the funny thing is, me and Ken actually started on the same day. So it was part of the restructuring of what this games team was going to be. We had some members of the team that were from the digital product studio, predominantly designers, and they wanted to inject games experience into it. So me and Ken joined. Ken made a game on his own before this point. Yeah, and I think for him, it goes back to that thing I was saying before about surrounding yourself with the people who you want to work with. That's how you'll push yourself and create your best work. So for Ken, he wanted to come away to a completely different place and surround himself with other talented people to make himself better. And make something that he couldn't have made on his own in terms of scope and style. And the House of Cards thing, which for anyone who didn't know, there was a cameo appearance of Monument Valley in House of Cards in season 3. It's in the 3rd episode, I think. The story of that is that I received a phone call in London, and I thought they were joking. It was Netflix. I was like, yeah, of course it's Netflix. And eventually I ended up returning their phone call, and they said, hey, our writer, a guy called Bo Williman, he's written Monument Valley into the script already. You know, I just want to know, are you guys cool with this? Can we use it? We need sign off from you guys anyway. I said, yeah, well, that seems like an incredibly stupid question. I said, we only have one request, though, and that's that we manage to see the script before saying yes. Because games always don't get the best reception when it comes to appearances within television. And our image of the game is really important to us. So can we see it? And if you've seen it, a lot of the articles that were written about that appearance at the time were actually saying it's one of the best. They call it product placement, but we didn't pay for it. It's the best appearance of a real game in a television show. It's written in the script completely, and may even, be part of it in the future as well.
And it was actually a problem that people thought it was product placement. Truth is, first time I saw the episode, I thought, oh, they spent a lot of money to appear in House of Cards. And then I went to internet to search, and I was super amazed to know that actually you did nothing to.
Yeah.
So it was like actually negative to some extent that people think that you were paying for being part of a
Some people did think that, and I think it would be, the speech that they go through on that episode is by far the best written review of, we couldn't pay a journalist to write a review more positive than what the guy in House Cards says. So it does seem to a certain extent like we paid for it. And it was just a case of the writer wanting to meet up with us. We didn't end up meeting up with the writer and having a conversation with him, and it was a case of, we really love what you do. You seem to really like what we do. Let's try and make something work. So.
Okay. Any other questions?
With Monument Valley itself, who did the sound landscaping to it? Because that's obviously quite an integral part of the experience of playing the game.
Yeah, and you may have noticed that in the team structure, when I showed it before, there wasn't an audio guy. I think the way that we personally approach audio is, once we know what project we're going to make, we want a specific person for that style. A guy called Stafford Baller, who's in Wales. We interviewed a lot of people, did a lot of sound tests. The soundscape is as important to Monument Valley as the visuals are, which is a shame that a lot of mobile game players don't play with headphones on. Like, we were really considering putting a notification in the beginning that says, please just wear headphones. So yeah, that was designed very, very early as well. And we threw a lot of work away to get to that point. It needed to sound a really good mix between realistic and fantastical, which is a really hard mix to get, especially when you're pulling what appear to be such large objects. So it's a really hard thing to get right. But yes, a guy called Stafford Baller who we're hoping to work with in the future as well.
Well, thank you, Dan. I think you are very talented, so
Thanks.
round of applause.